Hello guys, now let's understand the Spring Boot. Before we talk about the Spring Boot, let's talk about what technologies were used earlier. The first technology 1997 it was introduced, that is the servlet technology. In that technology what we have done is we have written an HTML code inside the Java code. So I will give you a small example to understand this. Let's assume that Amazon is using the servlet technology. Whenever you place an order in Amazon, the request will go to the order servlet. This order servlet will save the data and give you the response as in the HTML format. That means servlet always provides HTML response back to you. The problem is in this servlet technology is the code is very messy and it's not an understandable way. The developer will get confused very much when you write HTML code inside the Java code, and moreover it is not good for the big scale applications. To avoid the problems of the servlet technology, people came with a solution called Spring MVC framework. It was introduced around 2002. So here MVC means model, view, controller. I will tell you the same example which we have discussed earlier. Let's assume that Amazon is using the Spring MVC framework. Whenever you place an order in Amazon, the order request will go to the order controller. The controller will process the data and it will set the data to model. And this model and the JSP name will be sent as a response to the back. Whatever the servlets we have discussed in the servlet technology, that is the controller. So in order to set the data and get the data, we are using the model. That means when the request came to the controller, controller will set all the data to model and it will store it in the DB. So when you fetch the data from DB, right, it will take data from DB and set to the model. Along with model and the JSP name, it will send as a response so that JSP can use the same model inside it and render the data in it. So like that Spring MVC framework will work. There are some problems with the Spring MVC framework. That is, UI and backend is present at one place. That means UI team cannot work separately and backend team cannot work separately. The second was, in Spring MVC you have to do many configurations. So you have to tell that where the JSPs are present. The DB configurations is also hard in the MVC. You have to download Tomcat server externally and you have to configure in the Spring MVC framework. There is a major problem in this MVC, that you are mentioning which JSP has to pick which model to render the data. So for example, if your JSP name is wrong, that means application will break. And moreover, nowadays technology is changing. You want to integrate a React or Angular, you cannot integrate it because the JSP name you cannot mention over there, right? So that's where the Spring Boot framework came into the picture. Now here the advantages are, there is no external Tomcat is required because it is come with the embedded Tomcat. So that means inbuilt Tomcat it will provide to us, and there are no heavy configurations. So instead of a developer focusing on configurations, all the stuff, he can directly use the Spring Boot framework and ready to code it. Okay. And another thing was, it is a scalable framework because it will take a request in the JSON format and it will send the response in a JSON format. I will tell you the same example which we have discussed in the MVC framework. Let's assume that Amazon is using the Spring Boot framework. So whenever you are placing the order in the Amazon, the request will come to the controller, order controller. The controller will process the entire data, whatever it has to save or it has to process some other logic, it will do it and it will return the response in a JSON format to the front end. There you can use it whichever front end you want. It's not restricted to the JSP or some other HTML. If you want React, you can use it. If you want Angular, you can use it. Whatever technology you are preferring at the UI level, you can use it. I will give you a simple overview. The first technology was servlet. On the servlet, they have formed a layer called Spring MVC. On Spring MVC, they formed another layer called Spring Boot. Simple, right? I will give you a small example to understand these three. So let's assume that you want a shirt. You are stitching the shirt with the needle. That is the servlet technology. So you have bought a cloth and you are given to the machine to stitch it. That means they have to take the sizes, they have to adjust everything, right? That is the MVC framework. And you have purchased a share directly ready-made. That is your Spring Boot framework. Simply, it is flexible, okay, and scalable. And moreover, the Spring Boot is the ready-to-use framework. That's it.